Think back for a moment to your earliest memories. As children, most of us were praised when we were helpful, when we listened without protest, when we gave in quickly to what adults wanted. We were rewarded for saying yes. We were punished, scolded, or made to feel guilty when we said no. Slowly, almost without noticing, we absorbed a dangerous lesson that our value as human beings is tied to how much we do for others. The more available we are, the more lovable we must be. That lesson does not vanish as we grow older. It follows us quietly into adulthood, shaping our daily behavior in ways we rarely question. Think about how reflexively you reach for your phone when it buzzes, as though an unanswered message is a crime. Consider the heaviness you feel when you try to say no, the guilt that rises, the fear of disappointing someone, the fear of rejection. Remember the times you agreed to a gathering you had no energy for, or stayed late at work even when your body screamed for rest. How many times have you swallowed your own needs just to avoid conflict? Over time, availability becomes more than a habit. It becomes a reflex. It becomes a mask. Jung called this mask the persona, the carefully constructed identity we present to the world in order to be accepted and approved. The persona is useful. We need it to navigate society. But when we mistake the mask for our true self, we lose touch with who we really are. And one of the clearest signs that we are trapped in our persona is our compulsive availability. We present ourselves as the reliable one, the accommodating one, the friend who always answers, the colleague who never refuses, the partner who sacrifices without hesitation. On the surface, it looks noble. People admire your generosity. They call you dependable, selfless, kind-hearted. But beneath the surface, something far more painful is happening. Each yes that betrays your needs chips away at your authenticity. Each quick response that comes at the cost of your peace drains your energy. Each smile that hides your exhaustion slowly erodes your connection to your true self. The world sees your persona, the mask of availability, but behind that mask, your authentic self is gasping for air. This is why so many people who are always available feel perpetually tired, resentful, and strangely empty. It's not that they don't care for others. They care too much, often at their own expense. It's not that they lack love. It's that they give it away so freely that nothing is left for themselves. The trap of availability convinces you that you are doing the right thing, that your constant giving is proof of your goodness. But the more you give without balance, the more invisible you become. People stop seeing you as a person. They begin to see you only as a function, a resource, a tool. And here lies the bitter irony. The very behavior you believe will make you loved often makes you taken for granted. The more available you are, the less you are valued. What is always present, always accessible, always predictable eventually becomes invisible. Just as we ignore the air we breathe, people ignore the ones who are constantly at their service. They only notice you when you withdraw, and even then, not because they care about your well-being, but because your absence disrupts their comfort. Let us face this hard truth clearly. Being overly available is not compassion. It is not strength. It is not selflessness. It is self-abandonment. It is the quiet act of placing everyone else's needs above your own, again and again, until you no longer remember what your own needs even are. Carl Jung warned that wearing the mask of the persona too tightly keeps us from the deeper process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, authentic, and true to ourselves. And individuation cannot begin while we are prisoners of the need to be liked, needed, or endlessly available. The first step is simply to recognize the trap, to see clearly that constant availability is not love, but fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being unworthy. Only then can we begin to loosen the mask and take the radical, difficult, but necessary step of choosing ourselves. Carl Jung never saw the human psyche as a lifeless machine, reacting mechanically to whatever comes its way. He saw it as an energy system, alive, dynamic, constantly flowing. And just like electricity, water, or fuel, this energy is limited. You only have so much to give. Every thought you dwell on, every argument you enter, every emotional reaction you surrender to consumes part of that energy. The question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you allowing the world to drain it for you? Think about the last time someone criticized you unfairly. Maybe it was a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger online. Did you rush to defend yourself? Did you spend hours afterward replaying the conversation in your head, imagining what you should have said? All that time, all that emotion, all that mental replaying, that is your energy being siphoned away. And the more you resist, the more the irritation lingers. Jung warned us, what we resist persists. When you pour your energy into defending, explaining, or proving yourself to those who never truly valued you, you end up strengthening the very dynamic that hurts you. Now consider how much energy you lose to the endless habit of people-pleasing. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no, simply because you didn't want to upset someone? On the surface, it looks like kindness, but inside it's a slow drain. You smile, you help, you show up, but afterward you feel tired, resentful, and empty. That is not coincidence. That is your psychic energy leaking out into places it does not belong. This is the hidden cost of being overly available. It is not only your time that is stolen, it is your inner vitality. Jung compared psychic energy to a force that animates everything we do. If that energy is scattered, we feel anxious, unfocused, and fragile. If it is misused, we feel drained and resentful. But when it is carefully conserved, we feel whole, steady, and powerful. The problem is that most of us were never taught how to guard this energy. We were taught instead to spend it recklessly, to react instantly, to justify ourselves endlessly, to argue with every provocation, to comfort everyone who comes to us in need, even if it breaks us inside. And here is where things get even more dangerous. A person who leaks energy constantly does not simply become tired, they become vulnerable. Manipulative people can sense this weakness. They notice that you always respond, that you cannot resist defending yourself, that you are desperate to be seen as kind, helpful, or good. They push your buttons, not because they need to, but because they know you will react. And every reaction you give is another sip of your energy they take for themselves. Jung taught that a healthy psyche is one that knows how to contain its energy, to hold it within instead of spilling it everywhere. Imagine someone who does not answer every insult, who does not rush to explain themselves, who does not chase after every argument. That person feels different when they walk into a room. Their presence has weight. Their silence carries more force than someone else's shouting. This is the power of conserving energy. It creates gravity. It commands respect without demanding it. But when energy is mismanaged, the opposite happens. You become invisible. You become reactive, fragile, and easy to manipulate. People may smile at you. They may even praise you. But deep down, they do not respect you. Because what is too available, what is too predictable, what is too easy to reach loses its value. And your energy, once wasted, is almost impossible to recover. So pause and ask yourself, where does your energy go each day? How many hours are lost in replaying arguments that should have been forgotten? How much strength is drained by trying to prove yourself to people who will never truly see you? How many sleepless nights are wasted on conversations that should have ended long ago? Each of these is a leak. And unless you learn to close them, you will continue to walk through life depleted. Protecting your energy does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means becoming selective. It means choosing carefully where you invest your inner strength and refusing to waste it on battles that are not yours to fight. Because in the end, your energy is your life. And when you give it away recklessly, you are not just losing time, you are losing yourself. One of Carl Jung's most important insights was the idea of projection. He explained that people often project the parts of themselves they cannot accept onto others. Instead of facing their own fears, insecurities, and shadows, they cast those feelings outward. They see in you what they cannot see in themselves. Now, when you are too available, when you constantly make yourself emotionally open, you become a perfect canvas for those projections. You stop being seen as a full, complex human being. Instead, you become a mirror that reflects the insecurities, desires, and unmet needs of others. And this is where manipulation quietly begins. Think of that friend who only calls you when their life is falling apart. When things are fine, they disappear, but the moment they need comfort, they turn to you. Or consider the partner who always expects you to fix their problems, who leans on you so heavily that your needs vanish from the relationship. Or that coworker who constantly praises you for being so helpful, but only when your efforts make their life easier. None of this is accidental. These people are not relating to you as you are. They are relating to the role you have agreed to play for them. The cruel part is that you probably don't even realize you agreed to it. You accept the role because deep down, you fear rejection. You fear what might happen if you say no, if you set limits, if you refuse to carry someone else's burden. This fear makes you predictable. And predictability is all a manipulator really needs. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most manipulators do not need to shout, threaten, or demand. They don't need to force anything. All they need is to press the right button, and you will respond exactly as expected. They don't control you directly. They control you through your reactions. If they know you hate to disappoint, they use guilt. If they know you can't stand being misunderstood, they twist your words. If they know you crave approval, they give and withhold validation like a leash. And every time you react, you reinforce their control. Jung warned that as long as we remain unconscious of these patterns, we will mistake them for fate. We will think, this is just the way my relationships are, or this is just how people treat me. But it isn't fate. It is a pattern of projection and reaction, repeated again and again, because you have not stepped outside of it. The moment you stop reacting, everything changes. When you refuse to play the role they expect, the mask they put on you begins to crumble. Suddenly, they are forced to confront themselves, and that is something many people cannot handle. That's why your silence, your absence, your boundaries feel so threatening to them. It's not because you've done anything wrong. It's because you've stopped being functional to their needs. This is why people accuse you of being cold when you stop overgiving. It's why they call you selfish when you finally say no. It's why they grow irritated when you don't respond the way they want. The truth is, you haven't changed. What has changed is that you are no longer feeding their illusions. And here lies the paradox. The more you break these patterns, the more you free yourself, but the more uncomfortable others may become. Because when you stop playing the mirror, they are left with nothing but their own reflection. And many would rather blame you than face their own shadows. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Remember that. When people grow angry at your boundaries, when they try to guilt you for your unavailability, it reveals more about them than it does about you. It shows how much they depended on your reactions to avoid facing themselves. The next time you feel pressured to react, pause. Recognize the projection. Understand that not every emotion directed at you belongs to you. Some of it is simply someone else's shadow, looking for a canvas. And you no longer need to be that canvas. We live in a world that is constantly loud. People rush to fill every pause with chatter, every disagreement with arguments, every silence with explanations. Social media amplifies this noise, rewarding those who respond the fastest, the loudest, and the most frequently. In this endless competition to be heard, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But Carl Jung understood something profound. Silence is not absence. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a form of power. Think about the last time someone expected a reaction from you, but you gave none. Maybe they sent a sharp message and you didn't reply. Maybe they tried to provoke you in conversation, and you simply stayed calm. Notice what happened in that moment. The silence itself became louder than words. The absence of reaction unsettled them more than any argument could have. Why? Because silence removes their control of the narrative. As long as you are speaking, defending, or explaining, you are still playing their game. But the moment you go silent, the rules change. This is the kind of silence Jung valued. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of mastery. It is the silence of someone who has learned to protect their psychic energy, who no longer wastes words on ears that do not listen, who no longer fights battles that cannot be won. This silence is not emptiness. It is presence amplified. When you walk into a room without needing to dominate it, when you listen more than you speak, when you hold back instead of reacting impulsively, people feel your presence more, not less. Silence also gives you clarity. When you stop rushing to defend yourself, you begin to notice patterns you never saw before. The same arguments repeating themselves, the same manipulations disguised as concern, the same cycles of conflict that drain your energy. With silence, you step outside the noise and see the game for what it is. And once you see it, you are no longer trapped by it. Of course, silence comes with a price. Many people will not like it. They will accuse you of being cold, distant, arrogant. Why? Because your silence threatens their sense of control. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own discomfort, their own shadows. And that is something many people cannot bear. When you stop reacting, you take away the mirror they use to avoid themselves. You no longer carry their projections. And without your constant availability, they must finally face the noise inside their own minds. But here's the paradox. Though silence may distance you from those who depended on your reactions, it brings you closer to yourself. In the quiet, you begin to hear your own voice again. In the stillness, you remember what matters to you. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires this distancing, this sacred silence. Without it, you cannot hear your own soul beneath the roar of the world. Silence also teaches discipline. Words are powerful, but they are also expensive. Each one costs energy. When you become selective with your words, you begin to value them more. You no longer waste explanations on those who only want to argue. You no longer pour your truth into people who cannot hold it. Instead, you save your voice for the moments that matter, for the conversations that nourish rather than drain you. And there is one more hidden gift in silence. It reveals who truly values you. Watch how people respond when you do not react. Some will panic, accuse, or attack. Those are the ones who depended on your chaos to fuel their own. Others will respect your quiet, give you space, and meet you where you are. Those are the ones who see you, not just what you provide. The next time you are pulled into noise, remember this: you do not need to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not need to answer every message, explain every absence, or defend every decision. Sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. Sometimes silence says everything, and those who truly respect you will hear it. At this point, it's important to make something clear. Choosing silence, setting boundaries, becoming less available, none of this means becoming cold, arrogant, or indifferent. Conscious unavailability is not about shutting down your heart. It's about finally learning how to protect it. Most of us were taught to be accessible at all times. We've been conditioned to believe that being busy for others is the same as being valuable, that sacrificing ourselves is proof of our goodness. But in reality, being constantly available is not kindness. It is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It is the quiet belief that everyone else's needs matter more than our own. Conscious unavailability is the antidote to this belief. It is the practice of deciding, with awareness, who and what truly deserves your energy. What does this look like in everyday life? It can begin with small, almost invisible actions. When your phone buzzes, you don't have to answer immediately. You can take a breath, finish what you are doing, and respond later, or not at all. When someone asks for your time, and you feel your chest tighten with reluctance, You can give yourself permission to say no, even without offering an excuse. When a conversation starts pulling you into drama, you can step away rather than allow yourself to be dragged into chaos. These may seem like minor acts, but together they mark the beginning of a new kind of discipline, the discipline of protecting your peace. And here is the most liberating part. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You do not owe anyone an explanation for saying no, for being unavailable, for choosing yourself. For many people, this will be shocking, even unforgivable. Why? Because when you refuse to explain, you take away their ability to twist your words, to argue with your reasons, to keep you trapped in an endless cycle of defense. Your silence, your firm no, your unavailability. These things remove the script they are used to controlling. Carl Jung understood that every journey of individuation, the process of becoming whole, passes through a period of isolation. But it is not a depressive, hopeless isolation. It is what he called sacred isolation, a necessary retreat into yourself, where you learn to listen to your own voice without the interference of the world. This space allows you to rebuild your identity, not as a reflection of others' expectations, but from your own center. Conscious unavailability creates that sacred space that, of course, at first it will feel uncomfortable. You might feel guilty for saying no. You might worry that you are being selfish or too harsh. Others may accuse you of changing, of being distant, of abandoning them. But this discomfort is part of the process. It is the resistance of old habits breaking apart. It is the pushback of people who benefited from your endless availability. If you can endure this discomfort, you will discover a freedom far greater than the approval you once chased. Conscious unavailability is not about rejecting people or turning your back on the world. It is about rejecting the illusion that you must sacrifice yourself to be loved. It is about remembering that your energy is limited and therefore sacred. You cannot pour endlessly into everyone without first filling yourself. You cannot heal others while you are silently bleeding. So from now on, begin to see your availability as a gift, something valuable, something rare, something that must be earned. Not everyone deserves it. Not every situation deserves it. And when you learn to say no to the world, you are actually saying yes to yourself. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. This is the foundation of healthy boundaries. And it is the path that leads away from exhaustion, resentment, and invisibility, and toward peace, clarity, and strength. Asterisk: when you first begin to withdraw, when you first stop being available to everyone, it does not feel like freedom, at least not immediately. It feels strange, unsettling, even painful. You have spent years, maybe decades, tying your worth to how much you do for others. So the first time you say no, the first time you don't answer the phone, the first time you step back from a toxic dynamic, guilt rises inside you like a tide. You wonder, am I being too harsh? Am I losing people who cared about me? Am I becoming selfish? This is the stage of silence that feels heavy, the silence that echoes with doubt. But if you can endure it, if you can resist the temptation to run back into availability just to escape the discomfort, something remarkable begins to happen. Slowly, the silence transforms. What once felt empty begins to feel spacious. What once felt heavy begins to feel light. The noise of other people's demands fades, and in its place, you begin to hear something you may not have heard in a long time, your own voice. And with that voice comes clarity. Clarity about who truly values you and who only valued what you provided. Clarity about what relationships nourish you and which ones drain you. Clarity about what you actually want, not what others have convinced you to want. This clarity is the first step toward rebirth, a return to your true self. Unmasked, unfiltered, whole. Carl Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, often requires a period of separation from the collective. It requires stepping away from the roles, masks, and expectations that once defined you. This separation can feel like loneliness at first, But Jung also knew that solitude is not the absence of presence. It is the presence of yourself. It is the solitude of the strong, the solitude of someone who no longer betrays themselves just to keep others close. And here is the paradox. When you are no longer desperate for company, when you no longer trade your peace for approval, that is when you become most magnetic. People sense the strength in your solitude. They may not understand it. They may even resent it, but they cannot ignore it. Because in a world addicted to noise and chaos, someone who is comfortable in silence, someone who is whole within themselves, shines like a rare light. This is why you will lose people as you withdraw. Not because you have done anything wrong, but because your absence exposes truths they would rather avoid. They never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. When you stop playing it, they no longer know what to do with you. And though this loss may sting, it is not really loss. It is liberation. For in losing them, you find yourself. From this solitude is born a new kind of strength. The strength of being able to sit with yourself and feel at peace. The strength of no longer chasing love at the cost of self-abandonment. The strength of valuing your own presence enough to give it only where it is cherished. This is rebirth. It is the beginning of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for manipulation, for relationships that drain rather than uplift. Yes, solitude has its price. You may be misunderstood. You may be called selfish, distant, or strange. But consider the alternative: to continue betraying yourself, to continue living as a mask, to continue being available to everyone but invisible to yourself. That is the true loneliness, the loneliness of living disconnected from your own soul. Rebirth through solitude is different. It is not loneliness, but wholeness. It is not rejection, but liberation. And once you taste it, once you feel the calm strength of being whole within yourself, you will never again trade it for the chaos of being endlessly available. Because here is the truth: when you stop being available to everyone, you finally become available to yourself. And that is where real freedom begins. Asterisk. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Think about what that means in the context of your own availability. For so long, you may have lived as if it were your destiny to be the one who always says yes, the one who always responds, the one who is always there. It felt like fate, like something you could not escape. But the truth is, it was never fate. It was conditioning. It was a mask. It was the unconscious habit of giving yourself away because you believed that was the only way to be loved. But now you see differently. You see that availability is not the same as love. You see that silence is not weakness, but power. You see that solitude is not emptiness, but presence. And most of all, you see that your energy is sacred, and only you get to decide where it flows to. What happens when you stop being constantly available? At first, everything changes on the outside. People who once depended on your quick replies, your endless giving, your predictable reactions, they begin to push back. They accuse you of changing. They question your silence. They try to pull you back into the old patterns. But here is the truth: you haven't changed. You've simply stopped abandoning yourself. And those who were attached only to your availability, not to your essence, will drift away. And then, slowly, everything begins to change on the inside. The silence that once felt uncomfortable begins to heal you. The solitude that once felt heavy begins to strengthen you. The boundaries that once felt unnatural begin to ground you. What felt like loss begins to feel like freedom. You are no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of other people's emotions. You are no longer an endless well for others to drain. You are no longer living as a mask. You are whole. You are present. You are free. But this transformation does not come without courage. It requires the courage to be misunderstood, the courage to be called selfish, the courage to walk alone for a while. And yet, what is the alternative? To keep living a life where your worth is tied to how much you abandon yourself? To remain forever drained, invisible, and unvalued? That is not love. That is not peace. That is not living. Real love begins when you choose yourself. Real peace begins when you honor your boundaries. Real strength begins when you can sit in silence and feel whole. And real freedom begins when you stop being endlessly available to everyone and finally become available to yourself. Yes, let me ask you, are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to risk being misunderstood, even rejected, for the sake of your own soul? Are you ready to choose your peace, even if it costs you some connections that were never real to begin with? If this message resonates with you, I want you to write in the comments right now, I choose my peace. Let's see how many people are ready to step into this transformation together. And as you write it, let it be more than just a comment. Let it be a declaration to yourself, a promise that you will no longer abandon your own needs just to keep others comfortable. If this video spoke to you, take a moment to like it, to share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and to subscribe for more reflections on psychology, Jung's teachings, and the art of becoming whole. Because this is not the end of the journey, it is only the beginning. Remember, when you stop being available to everyone, you do not lose yourself. You find yourself. You are no longer abundant and invisible. You become rare, valuable, unforgettable. And in that rarity lies your true power. So choose yourself. Protect your energy. Embrace your silence. Walk boldly into your solitude. Because when you do, everything changes.